Nigerian military graduates 774 repentant terrorists will now be back in the society. And Nigerian airlines have threatened to halt flights over soaring jet fuel prices. Hello everyone, welcome to the program. This is Politics Today, live on Channels Television. I'm Sean Wakimale right here for you in our Abuja studio. Let's tell you first and foremost that the Armed Forces of Nigeria has again reaffirmed its commitment of the military to secure the nation through both kinetic and non-kinetic avenues. In Gombe, there was a graduation ceremony of 774 members of the Operation Safe Corridor who have gone through rehabilitation and radicalization process. The director of the Special Operations, Rear Admiral Kabiru Tanimo, who represented the Chief of Defense Staff, says the ceremony is a commitment of progress, a demonstration of national resolve, and a testimony to the power of strategic thinking in addressing the human dimensions of conflict. All right, let's tell you about the situation with regards to some of the breaking news that we followed in the last few hours for you right here on Channels Television relating to some students who went to ride jam in Benue State. Gunmen believed to be kidnappers have attacked a commercial vehicle into Benue Links, a transport company owned by the state. About 17 candidates traveling to Otukpo for the examination centers in the ongoing Unified Tertiary Matriculation Examination appear to have been abducted. And although the exact number of victims remains very unclear, for information widely available is that the incident took place between 7 to 8 p.m. Yesterday along the Benue Briggs in Otukpo, in the Otukpo local government area of Benue State. There's so much more to talk about, but there is a danger to the Nigerian aviation sector, and if whatever is going on, most of the airlines might not be able to function. If you know the percentage of the contribution of the aviation sector to the Nigerian economy, you know there is a danger looming. If the president does not speak, if the federal government does not intervene, there is a danger, and they've threatened that they will shut down. And you know the number of people who are employed within that sector. And that gets us talking tonight, everyone. But before we get into that, let's serve you with some of your political roundup stories.
The Policy and Legal Advocacy Center is calling on the National Assembly to fast-track the passage of the Special Seats Bill for Women and other key constitution alteration bills before political campaigns for the 2027 general elections begin. Speaking during the Citizens Town Hall on Constitution Alteration Bills in Abuja, the Executive Director of PLAC, Mr. Clement Mwankwo, described the Special Seats Bill as the defining issue of the 10th National Assembly.
Number 1 is electoral reform, 2 is judicial reform, 3 is legislature, 4 is inclusive governance, and special seats bill for women.
The special seats for women, there is a sunset clause for 16 years. I think that's over 4 election cycles. Then it will be reviewed. If it has achieved its purpose, we take it out. If it does not, we take it out.
As part of efforts to sustain the fight against insecurity, a United States Democratic member of the Florida House of Representatives for District 14, Kimberly Daniels, has called for the removal or redeployment of Nigeria's Minister of State for Defense, Bello Matawalle. The U.S. lawmaker made the call in a statement amid a surge in killings and heightened insecurity in Nigeria. She condemned the brutal killings of Christians on Palm Sunday and Easter Sunday in Plateau, Nasarawa, Kaduna, and other parts of Nigeria. According to the statements, the Nigerian community and leaders have expressed exhaustion with political statements from President Bola Tinubu and are demanding real action while the voice of innocent blood cries out from the ground. She urged the U.S., the United Kingdom and other international communities to increase diplomatic pressure on the Nigerian government to ensure that those accused of aiding terrorism are held accountable. Nasarawa State Governor has announced Senator Ahmed Wadada Aliyu as his preferred candidate for the All Progressives Congress 2027 gubernatorial election. He revealed his choice during a meeting with his political appointees at the government house in Lafayette, the state capital. The governor noted that his decision is after consultation with stakeholders and zoning of the governorship ticket to the western zone of the state. Senator Ahmed Wadada Aliyu is a senator representing Nasarawa West Senatorial District and chairman, Senate Public Accounts Committee. He recently returned to the All Progressives Congress from the Social Democratic Party. The Labour Party has called for the reversal of what it described as the unlawful transfer of Barrister Mutiu Agboke from his position as Resident Electoral Commissioner of Osun State, urging a restoration of electoral integrity in the Southwest ahead of the upcoming gubernatorial election. The party's National Vice Chairman Southwest, Abayomi Arabambi, stated this during a press conference held in Abuja. The party described her reappointment into the Independent National Electoral Commission (INEC) as a wreck after previously retiring as a director as a scandal requiring an independent investigation.
Remove Toyin Babalola from any role in Osun State or any other state. She should be returned to her retirement. The fact that she has managed to get back into INEC as a wreck after retiring as a director is a scandal that demands independent investigation.
A civil society organization, the Goodluck Jonathan Presidential Support Campaign Group, has asked former President Goodluck Jonathan to join the race for the 2027 presidential election. Leader of the group, Mr. Jeff Okoye, stated this during a briefing in Abuja, stating that the call is not driven by sentiment, but by conviction, anchored on competence, experience, and verifiable records of leadership. Mr. Jeff believes that Nigeria stands at a critical juncture that requires his leadership to set the country on the path of prosperity.
Thanks so much, everyone, for staying with us. So, Nigeria's aviation sector is facing what operators describe as a full-blown cost crisis, with domestic airlines warning that they may suspend operations from the 20th of April if the price of jet fuel, known as Jet A1, is not urgently addressed. The airline operators of Nigeria say fuel prices have surged by as much as 270% in just weeks, pushing operating costs far beyond sustainable levels. In a strongly worded letter to fuel marketers, Airline described the pricing regime as astronomical and artificially inflated, warning that revenues can no longer cover fuel costs alone. But fuel marketers are pushing back, insisting that the figures being quoted are exaggerated and pointing instead to the high cost of logistics, importation, and specialized handling. At the heart of the crisis are deeper structural questions. Why is Nigeria an oil-producing nation struggling with jet fuel supply? Why is the Dangote refinery not supplying the domestic aviation market, even as fuel exports rise? And what happens to the economy, jobs, and national connectivity if airlines ground operations? Tonight, we shall be examining the policy, the economics, and the survivor outlook of Nigeria's aviation industry, something that President Bola Tinubu will need to urgently weigh into. If you remember, some 3-4 years ago, a ticket from Lagos to Abuja, Abuja to Lagos will cost you less than 100,000, perhaps around 35,000-50,000 naira. But it's gone way about 4 or 5 times more. You could buy as much as 300,000 naira for a ticket, one-way ticket from Lagos to Abuja. If you're unlucky, if you're booking 2, 3, 4 hours to that flight, you might even buy that ticket more for a local flight. Let's get talking. The spokesperson of the Nigerian Airline Operators of Nigeria and the executive chairman of United Airlines, Professor Obiora Okunoghae, is live for us there tonight on the program. Thanks so much, Prof, for joining us.
Thank you. I'm happy to be here with you.
Thanks so much indeed. Difficult times, isn't it?
Well, it is.
You're caught between the rock and the hard place. Rising cost of jet fuel, which without the jet fuel you can't fly. And now customers say prices are high, logistics, salaries, and all whatnot you have to pay. You heard what the marketers are saying. They say, no, this is not true. And they're pushing back. What exactly is the situation thing? How dire is the situation of things right now?
I think it's very clear. We buy the Jet A1, which is commonly known as Aviation fuel. We pay. So we're in a better position to tell you how much we buy. There's no doubt that the price varies from place to place. And we are also in the industry knowledgeable enough to understand the shenanigans and all the shuffling that are going on there. So I'll start by saying that we acknowledge the fact that there are problems of energy all over the world as a result of what is happening in the Gulf region. We're not blaming anyone for the astronomical change in the prices. But we are aware also that before the crisis, there was a known, worldwide known cost of crude oil, which was around $70. And then you have, like, today, it's less than $100. Sometimes it had gone up to $100 and above. So we are quite sure that this definitely will have to affect some prices locally. So we also aware that we have Dangote refinery, which for us in aviation, we don't just see as refinery, we see as our savior. Because if there's no Dangote by now in Nigeria, I don't know what would have been doing with the business of aviation. So it's been very, very fantastic and helpful and wonderful. So our position is this. If you have aviation for a crude oil selling in the world market about $100, that is a flat consideration by the time it gets to Dangote. Because as at today, Dangote supplies the market close to 95% of the aviation fuel. And we know how much that they get from Dangote refinery. And obviously we can do calculations that when you work out some plus minus, some logistics, which also had gone on as a result of diesel and petroleum. So we can understand that. So we know exactly somewhere in the neighborhood of where we should be comfortable with. But that's not what we say. At the beginning of all this, we didn't really bother that much because in the business of aviation, there are high seasons, which you have to sell normally. There are low seasons, which you have to absorb some cost. So we had factored in actually the month of February, March as a time we should absorb some cost.
Let's break it down, Prof. Give us a vivid description of, for example, in the last 2 weeks or a month or 2 months, what was the pricing like? And what is the pricing like as of now that has made you and your colleagues to come out to say, save us, we are in problems?
A month ago, before the crisis, we were comfortably paying for aviation for less than 1,000 naira a liter. It's between 950, 970, thereabout. Today, 2,700, 2,500, 3,000, 3,300. And it's different because
about 150, 170% increment in the change of price.
And in some places, 300% and more, where you pay 3,000 plus. All right, because the question is...
You went as high as 3,000.
We in some places at some time, all those shenanigans, when they crystallize, first of all, there will be official scarcity, and then all the operators are desperate, trying to pump in to the aircraft, and then you buy at any price.
I imagine that there should be transparency in the pricing of Jet A1, because just like the most popular oil products produced in Nigeria, which is the petrol, the pricing is pretty much, and you see the refinery and either the government owned or Dangote coming out to say there is a change in price, and another 3 days they say there's another change in price. There seems to be a transparency, and we know the variation from place to place. So why is Jet A1 pricing not transparent?
You are right, and that's our concern. Every week, every Friday, the world knows the price of Dangote's refinery for the sales for the next week. We know the sales, we know the prices, and these prices are not eventually what most of the marketers who play all these games sell. So that's where the problem. We know, for instance, this week, for the supplies of this week, the lift what they are lifting from the depot, last week, from my information available to me, is like 2,099, just roughly 2,100 naira per liter. So plus and minus, if you put 10%, 15% of logistics and profit, you now should be getting about 2,300 thereabout. Why are we paying 2,700? In some places, 3,000, 3,300. That's our concern. And you know, for us as the operators, we're very sensitive. We know Nigerians are already suffering. We know the vulnerability of our economy and our situation. The easiest thing for us to have done would have been just, okay, work out your operating costs, put on the price on top of your ticket. And maybe by now, for us to be there and break even, that the minimum cost of a ticket to one hour journey would have been about 600,000 naira. We know we don't have to do that. We know Nigeria can afford it. And we know also the cost of fuel is not that high to have been the price we are buying it from the market.
Let's break it down further. There are regulators in the industry.
Yeah.
The operations of the aircraft is regulated.
Yeah.
The operation at the airport is regulated. Traffic and passenger control is regulated. So it's a heavily regulated sector. And I imagine that the purchasing, the pricing, the operations and the logistics of fuel, jet fuel for airline operator is also controlled by a regulatory body. Whose responsibility is it? Because it does look like it is a problem with the marketers and the airline operators in the pricing regime that we're seeing.
Yes, this is strictly between the operators and the fuel marketers.
So the fuel marketers are the ones determining the price.
Well,
are they?
Well, I mean, we buy from them, and
should they be determining the price, though?
Well, I mean, at the end of the day, is the price you see where you fly to that you buy, because these things you can't bring in anything from the airport. When you land at the airport, you have to be fueled by the available fueler, you know. And it's important to note here that airline operation is a deregulated industry. But in terms of the rules, the commercials are deregulated. You price your ticket based on the cost of your operations, just like the marketers, based on what you buy. But the fact of the matter that I said from the beginning, we know the cost of Dangote for Jet A1 from the depot. And we know how we, the operators, have been relating with the fuelers. We know the markup that are usually within the range that makes it competitive. Yes, it's easy to say if this one is selling higher, then you can go to the lower one. What you see on paper is there. You see public, this is how we sell. But you want to buy at that price, you are now told that it's not available.
But you said
and then you can only buy at this price if you. And then before now, we could buy and get invoice to pay later, maybe weekly, 2 weekly. Today you pay by cash and carry. So we don't want to determine the mode of their sales. So we're not complaining about that. But we are aware there are so many shenanigans which only us can see, and which the marketers know we know.
So there is a manipulation of the
pricing.
There
is manipulation, definitely. Otherwise,
but you said about 90-something% of the supply of Jet A1 is done by Dangote.
Yes.
But that means that Dangote predominantly determine the pricing.
No, we know the price. This price is not the price from the depot. It is the price at the pump.
Okay.
Dangote doesn't determine the price at the pump.
But Dangote also...
he doesn't determine the price at the pump.
So he's not involved in the...
No.
In the end point?
No. We're talking about the pump price. Okay. How much you have to pay when you have positioned your aircraft for fueling. So sometimes there are some artificial scarcity that are created, that you see this is our price today. But, you know, we don't have fuel. But if you want fuel, this is how much you have to pay.
So there's an artificial price inflation.
That's exploitation and manipulation, yeah.
That is what is going on. And we don't want to exploitation.
We don't want to pass it on to the passenger, because that would be very, very unfair. And obviously, you know, and we don't want any thing that will erode the gains we have made in the aviation industry, which is now the synonym of the world aviation. The minister has been working hard and is very concerned with this situation. And he know and we know that we don't just have to increase the price when we know that it's just because we are being manipulated. So that's why we think that we surely have to call these guys out and probably see if there are other ways, that we know what they're doing, and they will not do the needful.
So it does look, what you are inferring, that the marketers are manipulating the process to their own advantage and profit. In that sense, do you think that jet fuel pricing be regulated or left entirely to market forces?
No. There's really no problem with the way it is. All over the world is deregulated, just like aviation. We're not complaining about that. But we don't have the tools, we don't have the equipment, we don't have police, we don't have army, we don't have anything to go and arrest this people and say, hey, I caught you, I know what they're doing, right? So we're just calling them out so that whoever knows from the government authority what to do, to know there are some folks there who are really trying to do something that are not healthy for the economy and creating some unnecessary tension in the system.
Prof,
yes,
airlines like yourself are alleging artificial price inflation, and this is not the sentiment of United Airline or United Nigeria Airline or Obiora Okonkwo's view. This is a sector. This is your association as airline operators, and when you give that stance, the marketers are insisting that the prices reflect logistics and import costs. Who should Nigerians believe? What are the statistics? What are the data to show that they are in the wrong as you are inferring?
Okay. If you had seen the letter we wrote, the airline operators have been reviewing the market situation for a very long time. And we've been, you expected to have some reserves to deal with situations like this. That's happening all over the world. These reserves should be some savings from previous operations. They could be borrowings from the bank, which you know how much we are paying for loan, about 30% average. So for the past 1 month, we have not been complaining really hard. But some of these savings have been exhausted. And generality of the operators are already at their last breath. As a matter of fact, this situation had forced some to also stop operation. We have the records of some of our members have stopped operating. And we also know that some of us who are up there operating may not survive with their reserves in the next few days. And when that happens, it's also not good for the operators. There might not be all the operators say we need to get this.
Yeah.
Because there are some operators, when they have fuel, aviation fuel, we don't have problem. Like MRS. If MRS has, then you can buy at what the market is. You don't have a problem. But there are multiple operators. And we wonder, how do this fuel that is not available with the major operators end up in their hands? And then when they end up in their hands, they now start doing all the shenanigans. Then at first there's no fuel, and then if you want to buy, they give you price. So as of the marketers, yes, from the records available, they might claim they are not doing anything. But from how much we pay, we have invoices. And at that point, you just have to fly. We know that it's Dangote, for instance, like I repeat, this week is about 2,099 naira per liter from the depot. We're expecting to move it to Lagos, to Kano. The price, logistic costs for Kano and Lagos are different. We always know the differentials are 50 naira, 100 naira for the past years.
Of logistics and
differential between Lagos and Abuja. And the margin of logistics and profit come between around 10-15% maximum. But today you can imagine where you have 2,099 out of Dangote, and you have 2,700, 3,000, 3,300. That's where we are saying that this is really not fair, not to the industry, not to the Nigerian traveling public, and also not to the effort of the government that is making to make really aviation, which understand that it's not just for moving people, it's an enabler, you know, it's just a simulator.
I'm wondering where someone like the Minister of Aviation, Mr. Festus Keyamo, where he comes in this particular matter, because the bottom line is the people who are paying, which are the average Nigerians who are on the aircraft every day for their movement and transportation. And I'm wondering what his office and himself is they're doing. But, Prof, are Nigerian airlines truly on the brink of shutdown, or is this a pressure tactic to force government intervention?
No, this is real. Because
if you just want to call out the marketers.
We want to call out the marketers because we don't want to shut down.
But you are not really on the brink of shutdown.
We are with the last breath. I don't even know if anything is not done between now and Sunday. Some people might not even survive up to Monday. Is that bad?
You said by April 20th?
Even if nothing happens between now and Sunday, some airlines might even shut down before Monday. It's real.
But how did we get here, though, that in Nigeria we get to the point where fuel alone, based on your statement and what you put out there, that it accounts for about 40% of airline costs. That is far above global averages of the breakdown on air ticket costing. Why? How did we get here?
Shegun, we need to appreciate the fact that today, the problem of aviation fuel is not exclusive or peculiar to Nigeria. We know where the problem is coming from because of the Gulf region crisis and all that. We accept that. But what we're just saying is that we now have, before we had issues with these operators when there were fuel imported into Nigeria. We've had this kind of battle in the past. We know there were cabals and, some middlemen who tried to model up things. But today it's easier to know how much these fuels are supplied. And we also know that some reasonable marketers among them do also sell at the real price. We're not arguing how much they have to sell for their cost, but we are aware, I repeat, there are some shenanigans where fuel that should ordinarily be made available to the operators find their way backdoor to some other people, and then when you get to that source, they tell you it's scarce. Then it becomes like a kind of, black market, that kind of stuff. We don't want that. It has to be cleaned up. We don't want those operators, those marketers who will come into the ramp and be hustling and try to create this kind of tension. But the good news, the travelers are not feeling this impact yet. We are absorbing it.
You're bearing the cost.
We are bearing the cost because nobody...
Naturally.
We are bearing the cost. So we are not saying...
What percentage should fuel be taken out of your cost?
So ordinary...
Because you're saying it's about 40% now.
Yeah. So, yes. The world standard is like 30%, plus minus in an environment like ours, 40%. What it means, therefore, is that if I have to bring this cost of fuel and factor it into my own ticketing mathematics, I should now mark up my own ticketing price, and that will lead us to 500,000 and above. But we are retaining the old price we have in our inventory for two reasons. One, we do not want to unnecessarily and unduly skyrocket the price in the midst of all the sufferings Nigerians are having. And secondly, this period this thing started is the lowest season in the industry in Nigeria. That's that season that if you have to say this is my cost at 500,000, it will affect your pax load. Because at that point at the beginning, we're not even doing 50% pax load. That on itself is already a big problem. Do you understand? Yeah. So when you make it 500,000, it will be less. And when it's less, you have less passengers. Yeah. And the other alternative you have is to park your aircraft and they don't have to fly.
So the implication is that if you're flying a two-way, you might fly cheaper from some other countries to Nigeria, but because the airline that is either an international airline or not, that needs to fly out of Nigeria, you may have to fly more expensive than you flew into Nigeria. That's the possibility, right? with what is happening?
Well, you see, on the international market,
Yeah.
it's different because there is hedging possibility. You hedge. Like, if you had followed the aviation news, some operators worldwide had hedged their fuel 3 months ahead. The only thing they're crying out is that if this war continues and they run out of their 3 months hedging stock, then they will be forced to change their prices. So here in Nigeria, we don't have hedging.
That's the point I'm making, Prof. I'm saying if, for example, you are an airline flying out of Ethiopia, Addis Ababa, and the pricing follows the global pricing standard.
Yeah.
But in Nigeria, you know that you are going to buy jet fuel higher, or you have to refuel.
Yes,
so I'm saying that
yes,
you have to fly cheaper into Nigeria, or you have to fly more expensive out of Nigeria because you have to refuel once you land there.
Yeah.
And fueling at a higher price.
Logically, yes. But again, you have to understand that with the international airlines, the marketers have different relationship with them. They hedge. so they might have to hedge that you have to have a fixed price for me for this fixed quantity for a period of time.
And that arrangement is not there with...
Whether it goes low or high, they should maintain the contract.
So there is no hedging understanding for local airlines?
No, we don't have that. You know, it's like cash and carry. You asked about the minister. The minister is actually concerned, and we had been discussing this issue with him before now. He's very concerned that we must not have to allow or take measures that will bring unnecessary high skyrocketing ticket prices. And he's out of the country. We're in talk with him, so we'll have further discussions with him. I don't know which agency or government entity that is talking with, but he has done so well for this industry, you know, by extension this government. The banks, we are having great support from the banks now, hugely Nigerian banks like never before. So we're taking these positions and calling out these people and measures we must have to take to protect the industry. Right. Because if the fueling price is not proper, our costing will not be right. And when we can't fly and break even, the banks are suffering. When we come down, you know, unemployment, you know, rises. And even the fuelers, they themselves, if we don't buy, they don't sell. And also, they know they have commitments to the bank. So we're just trying to say, we have to be responsible as we deal with each other in this. Give
me a moment, Prof. We need to go on a break. But I'm concerned to know what has been a persistent bird strike on our aircrafts and how that is impacting the aviation industry. But that's going to be after this break, everyone. The concerns about the economy of the Nigerian aviation sector as it comes under threat, and some of the issues affecting it is getting our attention tonight on the program. We'll be right back on the program. Thanks so much, everyone, for staying with us. Professor Obiora Okunoghae is the spokesperson of the Nigerian airline operators of the country and the executive chairman of the United Nigeria Airline. Thank you so much indeed for your time tonight.
Thank you, sir.
Appreciate it, sir. Let me quickly get your view on what is also a major concern for so many people. And you've said that this is not about, this is for real, that the airlines are at the brink of shutdown, and this is not a pressure tactics. But if you look at what is going on, people will want to find out. Yes, you said this is right on the at the doorsteps of the marketers. So this is not a supply problem. It's a major pricing issue. But is this also a policy failure? Because a policy is directly a system issue and a regulator problem. Because if there are the policies are intact, the marketers will not be manipulating as you have alleged.
We haven't had any information that there are short supply from the depot. That's Dangote depot this time. On the area of policy, the only way I can link that to policy is allowing some form of marketers who are irresponsible at the airport and more of touts than racketeers, and those are the people who are creating this kind of situation. So if the regulators will be able to clean them up, in this case, I think the NCA and all that who certify the marketers, they should be able to go in and see the marketers that are creating this situation. This is a situation where they're just acting as racketeers. All right, so if they can clean them up, there are some responsible.
Gap here. There's a policy gap which has allowed, giving them the leeway to be able to move the price. This notches as high as it is.
Nobody can control the price because it's a regulated market. You either buy or you don't buy. But we have read in between the lines, and we know that occasions where this fuel are not available with the major suppliers, and we find them in the hands of all those racketeers who are there, something is fishing, all right? And we don't have the tools or anything to be able to figure out how they get those fuel. Because when you come out at first that there's no fuel, they create artificial scarcity, and then you see all the operators now rushing to get fuel, to lift the fuel and then take their passengers to their destination.
What kind of crises do we have on our hand? If airlines shut down, what triple effect could we see in tourism, in transport, in trade, in business?
It's huge. Aviation is a catalyst. It's an enabler. It's not just a business of the elite. We've been trying to make the policymakers understand the Nigerians. And then when you talk about road transport, it attracts some sentiment, some subsidies, and so on and so forth. But when it comes to aviation, it's allowed just to attend to Israel. Shegu, we have gone through this before. The whole of that COVID era, the first sector that got support from the government of the major countries, the first ever sector was the aviation. Because they know without the aviation, the whole economy was dead. But in Nigeria, we got nothing, almost nothing. The entire ecosystem of aviation was given 4 billion naira, which was ridiculous. But you know what? We survived that. We're very resilient. But as it is today, it's a different case. We're not looking for any government grant. We're just saying, let's have the fuel at a reasonable price that we know it should be in the market, which we do get from the marketers. There are marketers who still sell at that price that is expected. But the surprise thing is that it suddenly disappears and then you go to the black market more or less. However, when aviation shuts down, the economy shuts down. When there are no movement of people and goods, it shuts down. When the aviation sector cannot pay their loan, it's highly, a financial intensive industry, the banks will suffer. And they don't want that to happen. And when the banks suffer and the aviation industry suffer, then you lay off your workers. When you lay off your workers, unemployment is a big issue. And that will also affect not only the operators, but also the marketers. So the reasonable and responsible marketers are among themselves. If regulation cannot fish out those who are behind that, then they should look among themselves and then point them. We are ready also to blacklist those people from our own side. If they will come up to us and say, it's not us, it's these people, we can blacklist them amongst ourselves because when we don't buy, they don't sell. All right, so would you suggest subsidy for aviation fuel? Well, if subsidy that is intentional, especially this period, most countries, if you have read, they're supporting the aviation industry within this period. This is an unusual period. Yeah. In absence of subsidy or on top of subsidy, we operators will be happy if some of those fees and payments we are making to the government agencies can at least be suspended. In the midst of all this in Shehu, we still pay FAN, we still pay NCA, we still pay all the charges. if they can suspend all these payments this period, at least to support our own losses, because we are bearing a whole lot of this cost.
Well, so these are some of the measures. Are there other specific steps that you think that the federal government can take?
One of the things at the beginning, we called out these people and got to this point at the last resort. This letter you circulated is the second letter we are writing to the marketers, because I wanted to solve these things amongst us, because we're not labor union, don't forget. We are private people and we can deal with our situation. But also had a very long meeting with Dangote, our leaders of our Airline Association of Nigeria. He has been very wonderful. He's always there to help us. When we told him how much we are paying for this fuel in that private, he shouted, because he knew how much he was selling that out of his. So, and again, he presented his predicament to us, which is now a public information, that he buys his crude from he doesn't get crude supply, but he buys his source like any other refinery to produce. So we're just saying that if in the interim, yes, and the reason he told us and we know is that good percentage of our crude production has been sold, forward. There was a forward sale. I have a feeling that this was happening when we were even having a very minimal production, 1.2, 1.4. Today we are up to 1.8, 1.9, 2 million thereabout. Maybe government might find a way to have this excess that is there, and then make special provision for Dangote to produce for the local use. We think we have, and while we pray that the tension in the Gulf will subside, and that when it does, maybe things will come to normal, because some people are just taking undue advantage of that situation. We're expecting another review of Dangote's price tomorrow, because I think the review comes every week, every Friday, which we also monitor. So that's why when we tell you, we know what price is coming out of the depot, and we know what price you should sell. So, and today also we are seeing that the fuel, the crude oil in the world market is below $100. So we just don't want a situation where the differential in the price of crude oil as a result of war in the Gulf is 30%, 40%. And we're paying in our own market 300%. It's not sustainable.
By the way, congratulations, Prof. I see that you're increasing by the day the number on your fleet, and I'm hoping that some of the conditions around wet leasing will help to improve the conditions of operation.
Yes, thank you, Sheikh. I can tell you really that the industry, the aviation industry in Nigeria, is witnessing a great potential and growth, thanks to the minister and the Nigerian banks. Today, because of the policy, the correct policies and the resilience of the minister, he has opened a whole lot of doors. And the banks are moved in. And with that, the other international lessors and financiers are coming to Nigeria. We are very, very hopeful and grateful for this. And it's not only United Nigeria and other operators. So that's why we don't just want this team of people.
So you have really grown. The last year, I see that you have added more birds into your fleet.
That's just, and even this year we're bringing another 15 aircraft.
Wow!
Starting from the next 2 months.
Congratulations! That's so a lot. And you are increasing your routes too.
We're expanding our routes. We are going regional. We are going intracontinental and also intercontinental from summer. We're going to Europe and America from summer. We're going to have the equipment to do
what part of America are you flying to?
Well, we're processing to fly to New York.
That's a good destination.
Yes, that's summer, and Europe and other African countries.
You're not looking at Florida, but that's a good destination for summer.
Oh, well, I know you love good life, the beach thing, but
you should look the direction of Florida.
But we're looking at the numbers. We're looking at the numbers, because we don't fly for fun. Because we have our loans to pay.
Would it be flying straight to New York?
That's the whole idea, direct flight to New York.
Fantastic.
Yeah, we're
13 hours.
Yeah, thereabout. So we're expecting the equipment in July. First equipment coming in July, second one in October for that trip. So for any time from July, we should be ready to do summer flights. And so we're working better. And also we're increasing our human capital capacity. We're employing, new people, more people to strengthen our base. So it's a lot of work going on. That's why we don't need this distraction from the market.
It's a good thing. I'm hoping that infrastructure development within the aviation sector will also get some facelift. Some of our airports, some of the motor parks in some parts of the country are better than some of our airports. And I'm hoping that there will be something to be done with infrastructure, because it's key. But security, but landing, baggage handling, and passenger conditions and welfare are very key.
Yes, talking about infrastructure, Shagun, you asked about best right. Could you believe that as we speak, I have 2 aircraft grounded on Allege because of best right? One was yesterday, the other one was the day before yesterday. In less than 24 hours, 2 best right. And from January to this March, I've had 6. And so,
and you're not the only airline.
So other operators. Last year, APs had a total of 52 best right. And when that happens, you ground the aircraft. It disrupts your
scheduling and your operations.
Then it costs you maintenance money. And at the end of the day, we still pay what is due to all the agencies that are responsible for that. So, look, we just don't want to look at all those minuses in this whole process. We're Nigeria, we can only operate from here. And we just have to continue moving forward and hoping that it will be better soon. But those continue to be some big challenges we're having.
And I'm hoping, because some of the causes of bird strikes, which wildlife hazard to aviation, and could be environmental, and we should start thinking about curbing or preventing this kind of situation, considering what it costs, especially when maintenance are really not attainable here on the ground. But beyond that, safety is also very key, and there are those who will say we've got one of the safest atmospheric climates here in Nigeria. But by and large, as a closing argument, if we were to take, considering the number of in our economy and how aviation can play in that game, if there is one thing on your mind that you think that we should be doing, what would that be to ensure that the aviation industry play its role properly within the Nigerian economy?
We have new breed operators who are quite committed and very, very patriotic beyond anything, who are not in this just for the money, but also to contribute to the national growth. And we understand that aviation is a deregulated sector. First and foremost, we've been asking that we should have access to low-digit loans, because all over the world, our competitors, which a typical Nigerian traveler would like it to be like all their legacy carriers. But these legacy carriers get their loans at 2-3%. Yeah. It could be for 20 years. But Nigerian banks, for no fault of theirs, because it's within the regulations, they don't have to lend at below certain level because they have the MPR, So we get loans at average of 30%. That's huge. We don't want free money. We want access to single digit. And then we also would want a proper investment in the airport infrastructure.
Prof, we're totally out of time, but thank you so much. Yeah. President Obiora Okunoghae is Executive Chairman of United Nigeria Airline, and the spokesperson of the Airline Operators of Nigeria. But just as we close, the President Bola Tinubu is saying that he's not scared by the opposition. He's describing them as noisemakers and people with no regard for the rule of law. He was today receiving Governor Hope Uzodinma, who led some of the leaders of the Renewed Hope ambassadors to the State House from the 36 states of the Federation. But that we end the program tonight. Many thanks everyone for watching. I'm Sean Wakimale. God bless Nigeria.